If you're interested in learning more about BetAngel, its tools and the opportunities they present, then why not visit betangel.com today and download a free trial. So, is there a perfect trade to do on tennis? Where should you be and what should you be looking for to try and pick up on the match? When you bring up a list of matches in BetAngel, there could be like 4 trillion of them. And you're thinking, which ones should I trade and how should I trade them? And, what characteristics am I predominantly looking for? Well, the first thing to note, and I have mentioned this before in other videos, is that the real opportunity comes around in tennis trading by looking for a break of serve. If you're looking at a particular set, you're sort of saying, well, okay, I'm going to take this position here. If this goes wrong, this is how much I'm going to lose. And if it goes right, then this is how much I'm going to gain. And a break of serve will give you that uplift to a decent profit. So generally people are looking for breaks of serves, or they're looking for breakbacks, or they're looking for comebacks which involve a break of serve. Basically, you're looking for a break of serve. So the way that you first approach it is, there is a difference between the genders. So if you look at male tennis versus female tennis, you'll find that with women's tennis, there is a tendency for serve to be broken much more frequently than in men's. And also that varies by surface type. If you look at grass is a very fast surface with a low bounce, so it's easier to hold serve there. It's easier to get more aces, to smash the ball and give your opponent no chance to return it. And clay is the slowest. Now, things like the Australian Open and the US Open are on hard courts, and they're on outdoor hard courts. So what you actually notice with that is that generally it's easier to return a serve on that than it is on grass, but also it's a lot faster than clay, for example. So clay's perfect, but it's not. When you look at the indoor hard courts or the outdoor hard courts, they will give you an opportunity as well, just not as good as clay. So the surface types make a difference, but the most important thing to understand is the gender difference, and that is that women tennis players tend to get broken much more than men on a percentage basis. So that's predominantly one of the key characteristics you're looking for, is the WTA tour tends to be a better place to find matches where serve will be broken more frequently. It's not to say it's not going to happen in the men's game, but generally you will find it occur much more frequently. And that's why a lot of traders tend to focus on the WTA tour, because obviously the opportunity there to get breaks are much more frequent. Now also, it's played over 3 sets in Grand Slams. And as a consequence, if it's one set or that last set, when the break is possibly going to go, it's going to go like this. And think about it as well. A break doesn't have to occur for the move to be dramatic. Say a player serves a double fault and then just hits the top of the net and doesn't get the ball over. They're love 30 down. The opponent's only 2 shots away, or 2 good shots, two winners, from getting a break of serve. So the price will move quite dramatically there. So imagine the scenario. In the last set, the match has been very even. It's been going on for a while. And then they get a couple of points. Then the market will move quite dramatically. So where you start within the match can make a difference as well. You can start at the beginning of a match, but a break at the beginning of the match is obviously worth a lot less than a break in a tight match in the last set. So there's an opportunity for you there as well. But also when you look up and down that list that you have in Guardian and you're looking at each of the individual matches, there is a correlation to starting price and the average range traded. What do we mean by average range? Well, what we're talking about is, what's the low point that's reached in the match on average and what's the high point that's reached in the match on average. And when you're trading, you're interested in that, because if you can trade at either end of that range, that would be perfect. You're not going to do that all of the time, of course. But obviously you want a match that's going to exhibit the widest range. You'd love a match that traded where both players traded at 101 and both traded at 1,000 or something. I've never seen that match, but that would be the perfect match. And the worst match you want is something that starts at a certain price and then just goes in one direction, and the average traded range is small, because the chance of an opportunity isn't going to really be created there to be able to effectively trade it. So when you look at that, there is a correlation between starting price and that average range. And if you look at the graph that we are going to pop up here, then what you will find is if you actually look at the top of the graph, This is basically telling you the price on somebody that starts at big odds. And you can see from that basically if somebody starts at very large odds, then they just tend to sort of fly out. There isn't a great deal of movement necessarily within there. But as you move down towards more and more competitive start prices in terms of getting shorter and shorter odds, what I've actually done on this graph, let me explain, is I've broken it down into 5% increments in terms of the implied chance of a player winning a match, because we know that that's reasonably accurate. So we're using that as the basis, and we're using percentage rather than specific odds, because that's more representative of what happens in a match, because it's all going to be based around the probability of the player winning. But if you look towards the bottom, you'll notice that the green is basically saying, hey, this is very favourable, and as the colour moves down to yellow, that's basically saying it's much less favourable. But you can see that this sort of tends to congregate and have the greatest width when it reaches odds of 2, which is really logically no surprise whatsoever. Because if you think about it, if the starting price on both players is at odds of 2, it's a two-player market, and therefore they must be evenly matched. And if they're evenly matched, the chance of one or the other winning outright is going to be a bit of a tougher battle. But obviously, if you're down at odds of 105 or some very small odds, then that's much less competitive, and therefore there's a chance that the price could just go in one direction, or it could just bubble up and then head down in that direction. But the interesting thing is, if you split the graph and you look at those lower odds, it's interesting to note that there is still quite a decent range available on even some of the shorter odds. And this is representative of the fact that even if you get a player at odds of, say, 105, 110, 120, it doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to outright win the match straight away. They may have to work hard for it. And typically the best opportunity for an outsider to win a tennis match is to try and get that break in the first set, try and hold out and see if they can just get a lucky break and win that first set, and then who knows what happens in the second set. Maybe they can build momentum, get another break, and then suddenly it's a whole different ball game altogether. So the interesting thing is, when you look at the image that I put up before, you can see that the green shading extends for quite a way down, much deeper than most people would suspect. So that's sort of saying to you, well, even if somebody starts at a short price, you may be limited in the ability to back, but not necessarily in the ability to lay. We're not saying that somebody priced at 105 doesn't have that percentage chance of winning the match. They probably do. What we're saying is the path that they take to get there could meander all over the place before they actually end up in that particular point. If you look at the set matrix on Tennis Trader on BetAngel, you can actually see that is a visual representation of all of the possible paths that could follow within a particular match, and you can see how the odds will shift to reflect that. So if you base your trading around that, that will give you a hint as to where those traded ranges could be, because the set matrix is basically giving you an overview at the start of the match where the odds will be given a break up, a breakdown, 2 breaks up, two breaks down, and so on and so forth. And you can see that progression all the way through, and also the progression if everybody holds serve. But hopefully, if you're picking the right matches, you'll begin to realise that there's a huge variance with competitive matches, and less and less as you go down to less and less competitive matches, but that variance is still quite high, which is why people like trading tennis. You can take a position as the match starts, and at the end of each game you can reassess where you are, or if the player has dropped a couple of points on serve at a key point within the match, then there's no reason why you couldn't trade out at that particular point, as long as the ball isn't in play. Because obviously if the ball's in play, somebody will always be able to see that ahead of you that's actually at the tournament itself. So you should only trade in and out when the ball isn't in play and you have long enough to either take or liquidate a position. But yeah, if you use the set matrix, have a look at that graph that we shaded earlier. We shaded it because it's easier to do that and get a visual representation than stick numbers in it. But also, surface type is beneficial as well, but predominantly gender has an important role to play as well there. So anyway, hopefully that's given you a few clues as to where you can find the best opportunities in a tennis match.